Welcome to The Frequency of Courage, the podcast that ignites your inner fire and propels you to new heights of bravery and inspiration. I have one of my best friends, Maimah, here with me today, who courage is the theme of this podcast. And we've talked about this before. Courage, especially in terms of if someone might be depressed, getting out of bed in the morning, to getting a cancer diagnosis and how you face life, raising a daughter. Tell me what courage means to you.
To me, courage means showing up as my most authentic self, wherever I am, and honoring myself in that space, and knowing that there's a higher power that's carrying me forward. And so that allows me to kind of be brave enough to be who I am, where I am, as I am. And it's also knowing that despite whether I feel courageous or not, that I have the resilience in my spirit to get through anything.
You are definitely one of the most resilient people I've ever met in my life.
You
and
are.
Personally, you've shown up for me in so many ways. When my aunt passed in the car accident, you were one of the first people. You're one of the busiest people. You don't glorify the busy, but you stopped everything to be there for me. You've shown me also when it comes to like fighting for your rights, fighting for especially Black women, women of color to be health advocates, saving people's lives. So I'm curious now, I know you're a woman of faith, but also you've battled so much adversity in the time that I've known you in our short 15-year friendship.
There's so much.
But you've meant so much to me, and you've also been a great example of a strong, resilient woman. And things become possible when you have examples like that in your life. Who was your example? Or was this something that you've just had that faith and that knowingness within yourself? Where did that come from?
I think it's different places. I feel like we are a product of nature and nurture. And so I grew up around amazing human beings. My father was a farmer's child, and he knew early on he wanted to be successful. And he was the first to go to college in his family and became self-made at 30, and he took care of his family. And, you know, he survived. We went through 3 wars in Liberia, where I'm from. And what my dad taught me was that we would flee the country when the wars happened. Then he would go back when things calmed down. And I would say, Daddy, why are you doing that? And he'd say that people who are less fortunate than we are, that need us there to help them to get fed, to get maybe running light and running water, and to get back into schools. And so we would go back into the fire, so to speak, to give back. And that's what I learned early on. And when he was successful, he owned a rice business, which he would import rice and sell it to people in the country as a staple. He would give people free rice all the time. And what happened was that when one of the wars happened, he was arrested and he was going to be executed. My mother put on a pair of short jeans and tied her head and went into the barracks. People are running from the barracks. She's going to the barracks, one woman, and she goes there and says, my husband's been in prison unfairly. Please let him out. And they were like, get out of here. You should not be here, because women are getting raped and killed and beaten and all kinds of things. And at some point, one of the warlord who was in charge of, he was the reason for this whole war, barged in, and he said, why are you here? And she said, my husband's been unfairly imprisoned, and, you know, you need to let him go. And he said, no one's getting out of here alive. And she said my dad's name. And the guy goes, oh my God, that guy fed me. He gave me rice when I was nobody. So my dad, because of his kindness, was let go. They gave him an escorted car to leave the barracks. And when he came to the house, my mother didn't let us see him for a couple of days. And when he was able to get dressed and walk out, we left for the US. And so these things are like ingrained in me, these acts of courage where my mom and dad just did those things, right? My grandmother, she was a kindergarten teacher, and her hands were always busy. I looked at her hands. I loved her hands. Even when she was dying, I just looked at those hands that had sewn for people's christenings, showers, weddings, funerals, held babies. And when she was older, she didn't need retirement because her kids who she taught all those years, they sent her money all the time, even as adults, and when they had their own grandchildren. So there are acts of courage. And my grandmother, as she was dying, I had gotten breast cancer, and I was so scared. I didn't have any targeted treatment for my cancer, and she had no idea about any of that. But one of the last time I saw her alive, actually, at some point she couldn't move herself. Couldn't move her hand. She would lay there, and I didn't. It was hard to see her like not being able to move her head and maybe drooling or whatever. And I kept leaving the room and going back to wipe her, adjust her. And one of the times I turned back before I left, she was mumbling something to herself. And I said, Grammy, what are you mumbling? What are you saying? And she said, I'm thanking God for my blessings, my health, and my life, and all that He's given me. And to have her say that at that time of her life, unable to move or do, knowing it was the end of her life, and to have me hear that at the moment when I'm facing a potential death or life sentence, right, was life transforming. Those are a few of the things that have taught me courage. And then also I love to read books. I love The Diary of Anne Frank. When I left Liberia the first time, I remember packing the Bible and The Diary of Anne Frank and Anne of Green Gables. And Anne Frank, I mean, she was literally living in an attic facing, potential death. And she created an adventure in that space. And she created dreams and hopes. And she dreamed of what the life could be. And she fell in love in that attic. And so despite where things ended up for her, her spirit of courage has inspired millions of people around the world. In the Anne of Green Gables book, it's about a girl who was an orphan, and someone took her in, and how she created, and she was bold and challenged people, and she was just fiery redhead like you are. And so I just always found things like that, and the Bible has countless stories of courage. Sure. And so I always find things where people have faced ordinary or extraordinary things. Every act in our life, even the simplest act, is courageous to live. It's courageous to show up for the world no matter what's happening. It's courageous to pause and say thank you in this moment, because we're in a world that's constantly rushing and hustling and going, right? It's courage to just sit with yourself and be still. And so there's courage in the extraordinary things and in the beautiful ordinary things as well.
Prior to launching this, I really had a lot of introspective time. And I think one of the things that came to light, there's so much in that answer that I want to dig into, but you just touched on it: introspection, space and time to reflect on what your values are and what your life has brought. And we've talked about this before. Hurt people hurt people. Healed people can heal people. Maybe we're not healing, but we're helping unlock the ways to help heal.
But by you healing yourself, people can be healed by just being around you.
Exactly.
And it's something, when I got up one morning and I put a post up about just being still. And I just was sitting there just breathing, and I got so much feedback off that post. And people, I didn't realize, I was like, just me sitting there. But people were like, you know what? I don't have time to sit still. I have too much going on. And da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It takes courage in a world that says if you stop, someone's going to bypass you. If you're not there, you're going to, there's fear of missing out. Did a video on Instagram last week about JOMO, the joy of missing out.
Wow.
So there's so much courage in just getting to know yourself when the world's telling you how to be. There's all these people and these things that are telling us how to show up in the world, what success looks like, what good looks like, what beauty looks like. For me, the most beautiful act and thing I can experience in the morning is opening my eyes and seeing that I'm able to be cognitively aware, to breathe, to put my hand on my heart and feel that beating, and then to just like show up for myself. And when I can feed myself spiritually in those moments of waking to this wonderful new day, then I can show up for you, for my friends and other people. And that's when God, or whatever you call spirit, talks to you. When you're in those quiet moments, you get so much feeding. So beautiful, right?
I think it helps with being very intentional in where you spend your time, who you spend your time with. Is your activity aligning to the life you want to live? And let's go back really quick. So I've had the privilege of getting to know your mom.
She's crazy.
I've had her Liberian greens at the cookouts, and she is fierce and feisty. So I love learning that story about her. When you did come to the United States, though, talk about what a melting pot we are, and people that have these experiences where they are coming here for safety, for the ability to start a new life. Talk about the courage that's involved in like starting over. And I mean, I know I did a move from Washington, D.C. area to Austin, Texas. That is not like Liberia to the United States culturally and everything like that. So what are your thoughts there?
It was It was unexplainable. Imagine one moment you're like, in high school, you're painting a mural. Next minute you're graduating, you're told to go pack your bags and just pack essentials, and then you're on a plane without your family, by yourself, and people you know, but they're not your family. And excuse me, and you're learning that there's a war happening and you may never see them again. There's no internet, there's no TikTok, Instagram, there's no just pick up the phone and do call on your iPhone. There's none of that stuff, right? And it was so scary for me. It was such a shock that I still don't remember the entire ride, 15-hour flight.
Wow.
I remember landing at JFK Airport and just like getting off the plane, and I was like, people were rushing around me, and I'm like,
And of all airports, JFK.
insane, right? And people were literally at the gate pushing me out of the way, and I didn't know what to do. I was 15 years old, and this, I think it was a police officer or somebody just said, "Do you need help?" And I said, "I have to call my uncle." My dad had given me some money and a number to call my uncle in Jersey because he knew, that we were close to them.
Yeah.
And I remember being at my uncle's house at some point. So I remember being at the airport. I remember being at my uncle's house, and I remember being in Virginia. I don't remember this between those things because I was just kind of like there was so much happening in my head. And then everything I knew before was gone.
Hmm.
You know, it was all gone. I love to read. I had countless books. When other kids were outside playing, people were playing outside, I would be in my bed, laying down, reading, playing music, dreaming. I loved my room. I loved going outside at nighttime and putting a blanket out, looking at the stars and dreaming of just what the world could be like, what my life could be like. And so, like, imagine now I'm someplace without my things, without my family. There's no like LinkedIn or Snapchat to find your friends. Like everybody's scattered. And so I think I had two options, right? One option was to think about what I had lost. The other was to know what I still had. I had my life. And what I could gain by my perspective is all how you think about things, right? There's a quote by Wayne Dyer that I love, and I always speak about this quote. He said, when you squeeze an orange, what comes out? And when I first heard it, I was like, what the fuck? Like, shoot, orange juice. And I'm like, is Wayne crazy? Like, what? But when you're squeezed, what comes out is who you are, right? People say that people misbehave. When you're angry, I did that, I was angry, or I was under pressure. But when you're under pressure, that's when your true nature comes
It's a
out.
diamond, right?
Right. That's how diamonds are made.
Yep.
And so I feel like, but for me, I took on the persona. I'm like, oh, if I was Anne Frank in that attic, what would Anne do? WWAD. Anne would make an adventure out of this. So I began to think I'm in this new community called Reston, and I'm going to walk around and learn the place and make friends and meet people. And I took it as an adventure. And whereas I didn't think about it as we were broke, we have to accept food from the church, food and clothes and stuff like that. I took it as people are blessing us, and when I can, I'll bless them back, and I'll love them. Now, when my currency is love, always been like that. I just always thought that way. So, excuse me, sniffles. But I just always saw it as an adventure. And my first job I got, because my parents didn't, when they finally came, we didn't have anything. I had imagine a bedroom, an apartment with 2 bedrooms. Mommy and daddy are in one. My brother, 1, 2, 3, 4 brothers, couple cousins are in one bedroom. And I'm on the couch with my cousins, 2 other people on the floor. And it was insane. And so I had to get a job. So I go to the mall, and they're like, we can't hire you. You're too young, So I was like, well, I need some money. My parents were struggling. My dad's, doesn't have anything. So I looked at all the girls behind the makeup counter, and I was like, wonder how old they are. So I was like, can you make me up? She goes, oh, you're so pretty. I was like, thank you. So this one girl got me all dolled up, and I'm like, oh, I look like I'm 18 or 19. So I went to this place and got a job. I won't say what it's called because I'll get in trouble. And I got my first retail job, and I walked around and got 2 more jobs. Wow. And so I ended up having a couple jobs at 15, 16, and I just made it an adventure. And it's kind of how I see my whole life,
It's definitely been an incredible journey. Let's talk really quickly about motherhood too, because when I met Noe, she's 21 now,
Lord.
which I think she was 3-ish, 4-ish. She's probably older. 5. The pictures are adorable at one of your events in DC, where she always had a dress that matched one of your outfits, which was so you and so adorable. And it was just to see her grow into such a strong woman. And thinking about your journey with her, and how she was so scared. You were scared. You wanted to see her 21st birthday. You want to see all the moments. And I don't know if people, especially unless they're parents, which, I'm a dog mom, but I can only empathize with the fact that, like, I've had other friends. We know Loriana, right, with Gabriel, who was little when she went to the hospital. It's like, how is that with courage, but also the example that you're setting for her, where she's her best advocate. She now is so acutely aware of health issues, but going through all of that as a parent and showing up for her. I imagine it's like the days where you're like, I can't do this. I can't get out of bed, but you have to for your child. Like, I don't know how to empathize with that. I can empathize as far as I can because I don't have one. But seeing how she's grown, and she was always along the ride, having her pajama glam, her own events, and seeing this wonderful, beautiful woman, come from all of that. I know Noe is like so close to like your purpose and all of that, but like seeing her, and what an amazing example you've been. But courage
She's
as a
my
mom,
best friend.
courage as a mom and going through what you did as well.
Well, again, it's why I love meditation. I love intentionality. I love being present. When you have the courage to be your best self despite your circumstances, then you show up as the best that you can be. It's not about what you see.
Yeah.
It's about what you can see not what you can see with your eyes open, but with your eyes closed. When I close my eyes and I can imagine what my life is, despite what the world tells me it is, that it takes courage, right? And so when people said, you're a single Black mom, this is what the statistics are like about single Black moms, right? Oh, then you have cancer. Oh, damn. Like, well, your life is going to be fucked up, right? Like, or you have cancer, poor thing, you poor girl. No, I'm not a poor girl. How are you going to manage with just yourself, and you should find somebody to take care of you? No, I don't think so. I'll take care of myself if I find the right person. The courage to be single, the courage to be with myself and not need someone to take care of me unless I wanted someone to be with me as a partner complimenting me. Yep. Those are all acts of courage.
You've changed so many stereotypes with that.
The courage to say that I can be a lone person, not alone. There's so many things that people told me I couldn't do. How are you going to work all those jobs, take care of her? How are you going to take care of yourself? How are you going to begin Tiger Lily while you're in chemotherapy? You have no money, no board, no nonprofit experience. There are much larger organizations in the country. Just take care of yourself and get through your illness, and then take care of your baby and then go back to life. Hell no. That takes a lot of courage. But the only thing that I'm afraid of in life that ever has made me afraid is leaving this world without my full potential manifested. And so that's my only thing I've ever feared. I never want to leave this planet without the full badassedness, the full light worker unicorn, epic manifestation of myself. And I think when you focus on being the best you can be, you don't have to tell your kids what to do. They literally they don't do what you say, they do what you do. They become your energy, right? And so with my daughter, all the things that I pushed into, I don't push against, I push towards, and I open doors. The things that I dreamt about and I moved into, I brought her with me at conferences, cancer conferences, to meet with friends who were sick in treatment, to go to speaking engagements where I challenged people in healthcare and science and research and in pharma, where I challenged other regulatory groups about the importance of changing screenings, policymakers. I was scared shitless, but I said, you know what? I'm going to stand here scared and speak my truth. She was with me at Congress when I got bills passed. She would run in the halls into people's offices, members' offices, and ask questions. I'm like, get out of there, this congressman, so and so and so. So I brought her to these rooms where I opened doors for her. I'm like, this is what normal looks like. And so people said to me, you're putting her in all these places with people who are sick, or you're tackling issues with people who are adults who she may not understand what's happening, or she's going to be bored, or why is your daughter at a gala under the table sleeping at 8, 9, 10, 6. But, and also there are friends of mine who I'd helped through cancer who ended up becoming metastatic and ended up dying. And as I helped them in life, and when they were in transition, they asked for me to come, and I was going to be there for them. And I brought her with me. There's courage in in choosing to be in this life. There's courage to live this life. There's courage in knowing that you're going to another place. But also when people are in that place of needing the most, when they're the unknown, it takes, for me, it was terrifying to love someone deeply and be with them in that place.
Yeah.
So also, it was also a blessing to be with them. And I wanted her to know that courage isn't always this thing where you're on a stage or in front of a microphone or you're feeling strong or resilient. Courage could be that I'm so scared to lose my friend. I don't know what's happening. I can't help her, but I can love her in this time. So I'm going to show up for her. And what that did for Noelle is it watered a seed in her of deep compassion, of deep empathy, of deep kindness, of love. She is the best person I know. She's so good. She's so good. She's been through things where she's had her own health illnesses, or health challenges rather. And I'm telling you, really, really bad things that she's been through, hard things. And in the worst places she's been in, she'll say, can I help that next person because they don't have anything? She went through a lot with her physical health and her mental health.
Yeah.
And even in her place, one time she was having the hardest time with her mental health. And I was homeschooling her. I homeschooled her, actually. I pulled her out of school in high school. I homeschooled her for almost 4 years. And at one point she had a friend who called her at, I don't know, like 11 at night. And she was saying, I don't feel good. I don't feel great. I'm having some bad thoughts. The same friend had bullied her. That's one of the reasons why she was taken out of school. And they all cut her off because they were like, we don't want to be around her. She's weird. But she was depressed. She was going through a lot. This friend calls her for help. And she comes, wakes me up, and we get in my car to go help her friend. That's the kind of person that she is. And so she is such a good person. And now she wants to go to school to be a child psychiatrist to help children who have been through mental and physical.
Wow.
So I feel like when you say, like when I look back on my life, and even now at South by, I'm on all these different panels and people, it's a big deal, but I'm still scared. Like, it's like, I know that the words I say are going to touch thousands of people, are going to hear those words. It's going to impact what they think and how they are. And so I'm never not, I always told God, never want to be the kind of person that becomes successful and is so full of ego that I don't realize the import of what I say and what I do. So whenever I get before a microphone or on a stage, I'm always nervous because I want to make sure that I make the right. But I show up anyway.
It's so important
to be. Yeah.
You're also touching on, and I know you have a campaign with GSK around living legacy, but you truly are living your legacy every day. And I think that that's a brilliant campaign too, in terms of showing support and education.
You know what it's about though? The campaign's about clinical trials. So there's this whole push around, clinical trials, and people should be in clinical trials, especially people of color. Black women are.
Well, there's a lot of
they're at least represented.
Past history on why people might not want to do trials.
It's
right?
a bad legacy.
Yeah. How? Well, I guess it's through podcasts. I'm answering my own question of like, how do you overcome the past history in this country when it came to trials?
Well, you build a new living legacy, right? Because people we know that Black women are underrepresented in clinical trials. They're not asked. They're not asked or offered. And even when they're asked, because it was happened with Henrietta Lacks and Tuskegee and so many other things that people were radiated on and experimented on and died, and all these horrible things happened. But there's been so much done to protect people of color, all people of color right now. And there are patient groups like mine who are involved in regulating how trials are put to market, working with companies like GSK, Amgen, Bristol BMS, and others that are doing great work. There are many others doing great work around inclusivity and diversity and protecting patients' rights in clinical trials. However, even the words, despite even the past, the words clinical and trial are still who wants to be in a clinical setting or a trial setting?
All I think when I think those words, it's like experiment on my body, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But
so what we did was we said, what does a trial look like? So we put together a campaign that GSK supported, and they said, you do what you want. Give us the parameters and we'll agree to. But here you go. Here's the funding. What do you want to do? So it really was not pharma driven. It was patient driven. It was super cool. We reached almost 500 million people during this. It was on the ground in the community outreach program. Social media influencers doing like get ready with me videos, getting ready for a clinical trial, going to a trial and saying, I'm sitting here getting a trial drug. So it's not like you being tied to a bed.
It goes back to what you're talking about, Noe. You're allowing people inside access into the situation to see and understand the process of what that is.
it's how
That's
you break
super
down them.
powerful.
Yeah. And the name of it, because I was like, the people, my team was like, what do we call it? And I was like, trials are about creating a new legacy, a living legacy. If you get into a trial, not only can you extend your life, but the next person's life after yours, somebody who may never know you, maybe
Sure.
they get on a drug that you
Yeah.
took as part of a trial, that
Right.
lets them have extended life. And the goal for all of us is to have cancer be one day a chronic disease, not a terminal one. So
That was also one of the most meaningful things with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society when I did all that work with, we have
it
a
was so
mutual
amazing,
friend,
by the
Debbie
way.
Jo,
So proud of you.
but raising like, I don't know what it was, like $120,000 in 10 weeks. Meanwhile, like some people are raising $500,000 or whatever, but it's $50,000 per cancer research grant, and why they study the blood. It's easier to do. Anyway, that was one of the most moving moments of my life, where it was like that thought of whoever's life is better, or you're extending it by a year, or whatever that looks like. And the people will never know. We don't know who's going to necessarily listen to this podcast. We don't know what nugget they might pick up on. And I feel like,
I'm getting
and I am
chills as
so
we're talking.
appreciative, because it is that ripple. And we spoke about this the other day, of when I look at my life, I'm like, I'll be 38 this year. I've known you for,
You were a baby when I met you.
I mean, I've
You're
known you
still a
for
baby.
15 of it. And we have a friendship group for those listening. We call ourselves the Fab
Fab
Five. They're going to love it. But what's interesting is that different backgrounds culturally, different age generations. I am the baby. So we have, like, at the time it was 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. But I think that's also one of the things that I would recommend people listening to. It's like, share space and get to know and understand the lives of people that are different from you, different ages, different backgrounds. And I applaud you when, I'll say your age on air, 51, 50.
I'm proud.
Doesn't look
This
a
is the
day
new
older.
50, people.
But when I think about you and being an 18-year cancer survivor, you focused on your health, your well-being, your wellness. While you do love your sometimes your fancy clothes or your makeup, it's like, there's this level, though, of like, my health is my biggest wealth. It doesn't really matter about the other stuff, but you're also creating kind of a new paradigm for women, especially, to look at age in a different way. Age is your energy, but also our society has this way of, you must be perfect at every age, every stage.
I went on this morning, I did my morning meditation, prayer, gratitude, all that. I go on Instagram and I see a picture of Kim Kardashian, and it's one of Jennifer Lopez, and people are like, and there's one of like another actress, Pamela. No, it wasn't Pam Anderson. It was somebody. It was three women who were usually glamorous, right?
Sure.
And people were just like ripping them apart. Oh, she's old. She's old, and why are you doing that? It was Nene Leakes from the Real Housewives of Atlanta.
Okay.
Why is your old ass out? You should be home with your grandchildren. I mean, like, oh my God,
So
Kim looks
mean.
normal now without her filters. Oh, Jennifer Lopez, you're old.
Keyboard
Sit
warriors.
down. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the? Why are people so mean? Like, why is it that for me it's a privilege to be breathing? I have friends who died one of my friends died when we were teenagers. I have friends who died in their 20s. I have friends who died last month. She was fine when I saw her in October, November, December. Her cancer came back in January. She was gone in 2.5 weeks. She was dead, metastatic on diagnosis, and gone in 2.5 weeks. People have this thing with age, but also I find that women who are older pick on younger girls as well too, right? When you're young, oh, you're a little thing. You don't know anything. You're young, and so women who are older pick on younger girls. Girls who are younger pick on older women. And there's this thing that women do. Forget the world in general, men. Forget men for now, and what the industries do to us. But we in ourselves tend to like think that young girl is like, why are you wearing that short little or tight little outfit? Yeah. But then why are you wearing it at 40 or 50 or 60? Like, when can we just be ourselves? I think what our group has done and what we've done for each other is like, be yourself, be who you are. In our group, there's Debbie Jo, who's almost 70, and she's like the youngest person at heart than all of us.
We're like, we're telling her like,
calm your ass down. But she has the best time, Yeah.
But then she's also lived a life. She'll be a guest one day here, of what an amazing woman as a nurse.
Amazing.
And then her Maimah and I, we used to go to Debbie Jo's house when Howard was around. I got the tissues here. Howard was an incredible man, and he had this long battle with leukemia. which also got me involved with Leukemia Lymphoma Society with Debbie. But needless to say, again, back to like Maimah and I carved out time where we would go weekly and spend time
On
with
Sundays.
Debbie. And even when Howard was weak, he always came to say goodbye to us. And that always left an impression on me, especially when it's like, no matter what you're going through, he knew the fragility of life. He might not have talked about it, but like he always made a point to acknowledge, and he loved that we were coming around for Debbie. I think that our group, to your point as well, because while I might be like the young one where I have, I think I've had some wisdom and we've had experiences, the group's always been receptive to, one of you might call me for my perspective or my advice. And I'm like, oh, I don't, this is what I think. But it's a beautiful thing where I think, again, back to the concept of hurting people, I think insecurity breeds that kind of behavior amongst women. And I think there's this level of, are we going to embrace this kind of like scarcity mindset or an abundant mindset where just like women in the workforce, I worked in the NFL, I've worked in high tech. There's
You've been through a lot.
oftentimes where women, I might have been the only woman in a room, or there might have been a couple of us, or the women that come generations ahead of me. I now have a level of that compassion of, wow, they really needed to command and control. Or we talk a lot now, the terms of masculine energy, feminine energy. And I'm thinking about, I definitely leaned into my masculine energy where it's achieving success, taking up space, being able to talk, right? Versus like, actually, my superpower might be in my ability to have high EQ, be able to be empathetic and see the room, right?
You had to do that, especially with your NFL days, right? You were in rooms that were highly masculine, and there were a lot of things happening that hurt women.
Yeah.
And you had to know how to navigate your space in that world, and then when to say, you know what, enough's enough. Yeah. And talking about courage, I mean, wow, to be in your late 20s, as a young woman, your entire career has been in broadcasting pretty much, and now you're in a different career in IT, and you're coming out against a national franchise, and you were one of very few women that were speaking up.
Yeah.
And you didn't have any, that I knew of, protection, or you don't have a lot of money, I was like, oh my God, we were like afraid for you because people tend to attack women who speak up against the truth, right? Against untruths and against what's right to speak up about.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was for me, like, you were extremely courageous in doing that. And I was like, little Miss M, like, what's going to happen? And I was just so proud to watch you stick with it. And then at some point things didn't kind of died down. I'm like, oh my God, like when you put yourself out there like that and then nothing happens, I knew how you felt. Yeah. And then things change at some point, but like you stuck with what you believe was true. And that's a huge, act of courage. When you moved to Austin, you left your entire your network of people that support you and moved here. I'm like, why is she leaving us? But you went to go find yourself and discover new territory. Then you got here. Then there was COVID, and you really had to find yourself because you were by yourself, right. And so I love that you're doing this podcast. I love seeing how courageous you have been. Even when your aunt died that day, you called me and we met right away, right? And you had to go to the car at some point and I was like, you're the kind of person that is always there for other people, Megan, and always there to speak up about what's right and what's just. And I admire that about you,
Thank you. And I think about our group and our friendship, and where so many people, I'm sure you get this all the time too. It's like, how do you know this person? Or how do you like, it's such a wide network of people. But I was like, it's how we show up. And I need to own that now. It's like, no, I am a great friend. I am someone that's going to be there. And you're that way. And I've had examples of strong women in my life, men too. We don't get here alone. But I think there's a purpose, and we've talked about this, of like, you're empowering women, especially with their health. I feel like empowering women going into business, or how do they translate into a remote working environment, or these meetings where they might be the only one. It's uncomfortable. And I think the more of us that can support each other, and really, like, I'm so over any mean girl squad.
No mean girls allowed.
And there's also this perception of, how you might show up one day, the experience someone has with you could be like, that's just like scratching the surface. There could also be something going on. If we lean in a little more compassionately to get to know them,
I love what you just said,
it might
though.
create some understanding. Because if I think back on if I ever had a bad day and maybe I was short with somebody, now I'm like, that was that one perception. Or before I moved in 2019, and I know it had been a while since we saw each other with the move, there's a lot of people in Virginia, for example, that have a version of me in their head from before 2019. It's almost like a reintroduction where people hold that place in time of, oh, I knew Maimah then. Like this is where we have to allow, I guess it's allowing the space for involvement.
Also, it's being open, though. Like, people ask me all the time, how are you and that person friends? I don't like her. She's a bitch. Or she was mean to me. Or she didn't speak to me. Or there's some slight they have in their head. And it could have been like, and then I'm like, well, do you know that her kid had a brain tumor? Do you know that her son was suicidal? Do you know that like that person, maybe going through a divorce, or their parent is sick that they're taking care of, so they're always tired. That's why they're like constantly on their phone. Like, you're like, do you know why that woman, she always leaves work? She just leaves work when she feels like it, and then they give her a free pass. Well, she's taking care of a sick child at home if the person that's helping her has to. People don't know these things, right?
Yeah.
And so one thing I've always done is always ask people like who they are. So when I meet somebody, I'm not good at networking. I don't like networking because I'm the one asking people like,
Well, it feels very surface level and quick versus like, I want to sit down and really, we're going to cry at the end of this conversation, right? Yeah. It's like,
I want to know who you are. So
right.
I ask the deep, like, who are you? What's going on? So like,
and you're actually listening to the response.
And I'm looking at their eyes and their gestures and what they're saying. I'm looking at everything, all the things, right? And so I think when you look at people from that perspective, you get to know who they are versus what they even tell you they are. You can see and feel. And they open to you more. And then as they change, like I don't talk every day, every week, every month. But whenever I see you, I don't just see what you say to me, or even if we're texting, I'm feeling out for what, I look at your pictures on Instagram. I'm like, I'm seeing the changes that happen. So when I saw you yesterday.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I don't have to even ask you how you're doing. I can see the evolution. So what if we were taught, taught about intuition and empathy and feeling self and the soft self and the hard space stuff in school versus just, learn your math, do this little, whatever the heck we do, right? Because after what I learned, I forgot that shit already.
Yeah.
But there are things that I've studied on my own. I used to buy books so Time Warner had these books about like, time, bending time, and about like, like seeing something that's not there. And I used to buy all kinds of like spiritual, metaphysical books. So I just felt like there was more than I was being told in the world. And so I've always been curious about what I'm being told, what I can see, what I can't see, what I can feel. And even when I'm making big things in my life, big decisions, I will close my eyes and I'll just ask myself to suspend any judgment about what I've been told and feel into what to do. And that's with people too, right? Like, what am I feeling about you right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's where, and I love that you brought up the school system and at least how we do things. I feel very strongly that we need to do more work that's healing. There's some organizations that instead of detention, they're letting kids do meditation or doing yoga.
I've seen that.
And if you're living in an inner city and children, you don't know the situation, or maybe it's not so good when they go home, or that could be anywhere. But if we sit with them and teach them, how do you manage life? How do you manage stress? Some of these kids are dealing with things kids shouldn't deal with. And I think there's an opportunity as we talk about this stuff that maybe things can change or be a part of that change. And I know I'm a change maker. I freaking know you are. So I feel like, and we're just two people, and that's where it's like, it is this ripple. And
it takes courage to do that too.
Yeah.
Though. Even when I was parenting my daughter, you asked me about Noelle earlier. Yeah. So in my culture, discipline is discipline. I'm African, right? We don't just say, "Oh, hey, Bobby, go in the corner," and Bobby, don't talk to me like that. Stop it, mommy. Bobby, don't you do that. And my mother would pick up. She would handle me, right? My grandmother, like this, is how we were raised. It was okay. It was what it was. Abusing a child, something different. I don't condone that, but we were disciplined, and that's what it was. With my daughter, though, when she was little, she would throw a tantrum and fall on the floor. I would just say, "Okay, you do that. You express what you got to express," because she couldn't really express herself. She didn't understand. She's learning emotion and how to get what she needs and how to tell the world what it is. So I was like, you could do that. I'm going to be upstairs watching something or reading if you want to talk about it. Do you want to talk about it? Ah. Well, when you want to talk, I'll be upstairs. And she would do that, and I would just hear her kind of calm down and, Mama, I want to cuddle with you. You
Aw.
okay? Okay, so what's happened? I don't feel, she would, I don't feel good. As she got older, she would express, I don't feel good, this happened, or I don't know what's wrong. And somehow I would comfort her, and I would say, well, if you feel like that, breaking something or thrashing on the ground isn't going to help you. If you could talk to me, or are you tired, or something happened in school? And so, like, I told her a few things. It's okay to feel how you feel. I'm not going to judge it. I'm going to respect you. I'm going to allow you to feel how you feel. You need to allow yourself the space to feel how you feel. You need to allow yourself the space to express how you feel. Also, there's ways to express how you feel without being punished for that. You
Yeah.
get punished for sometimes saying your truth, right? And then also, there are ways to express how you feel in a way that can get you to get what you need back. So, like,
Yeah.
that's how I raised her in that space. And so even now when we communicate as a 21-year-old, I think she tells me, I'm like, la 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 la. She's like, you taught me how to say what I feel. So
Well, I think you're bringing up something that's really interesting, and it pulls a thread across your personal and your professional life, and it's about impact and the emotions that we have and how we express those into whether it's intentional action, inspired action, just like protesting or lobbying or getting funding or whatever. It's fascinating to me because if we aren't, it's great to express the emotions, but what's our outcome that we're looking for versus I've been on this concept of, and I credit Brendan Burchard with the group that I'm a part of with this one is reacting versus responding. Reactions are so quick, emotionally driven, sometimes not thought out, damaging potentially. Whereas a response, we're thinking about what are we feeling? Why are we feeling that way? What's the intended outcome we want to have? And while you might be angry about some policy or whatever, or I know the government's giving what, $12 billion towards women's health research coming out. It's like,
where's it gonna go though?
Yeah, exactly. And then how do we direct that conversation and how people can be active in it? So I think in all the work you do with getting sponsors and partners and people to, sure, they'll hear your story, they'll feel like, oh, okay, but like, where are the dollars that are going to make that impact and what's the policy behind it? Can you share a little bit about your approach to pull that thread together around like it all has to come back to impact? Because you could get really upset.
I think it's interesting because I feel like everybody, I don't know how to even say this. So let's say, for example, there's an issue right now around drug pricing,
Sure.
right? And when I first heard that, when you hear about drug pricing, what do you think? People, why is the government, why can they lower drug prices?
Mhm.
Why can't pharma make the prices lower? People who are, less financially where,
Sure.
don't have money, can't afford certain drugs, and it's going to impact them negatively. I've always been like, that's horrible. Why don't we do, so your first thing is, okay, I want the drug pricing to be lowered to better help people who need to afford these drugs to feel better, right?
Mhm.
So they're more accessible. But then when I got to understand behind it, the deeper layer of it, so when the way it happens is, and if I'm wrong, someone will correct me on the podcast, I'm sure. People will be in the comments.
That means they listened.
They're listening and they'll be in the comment section. But
They've made it this far.
what I've learned is that if companies invest money in R&D to make sure the drugs are effective, safe, tested properly, efficient, ethical, and work for the right people's bodies, all that R&D money comes through investors that invest in pharma to do the work. And then when they get, pharma works with communities, scientists, researchers, advocacy groups. There's all this work done to get a drug from the ideation of the molecule to the down to be someone's like hand, right? And so, but if the investors are investing in the R&D for pharma, in the pharma companies to do the work, then you don't get the drug. So there's some issues going on right now where they're looking at where we're seeing that there's less money being invested in pharma. Companies are like now merging. Some are laying people off, and what happens is that disproportionately affects people who need drugs right now, and in the future, the pipeline is getting smaller. And when you look at who's even facing the highest disparities now, it's people who are brown and black. So if the dollar is lowered to getting money in investments in pharma, that dollar is being lowered will be less distribution of the right kind of drugs, people who need them the most of all people, but those who are having the highest disparity. So the cheaper the drug is, right, that affects the R&D money into that there's less
Yeah.
drugs for people who need them. Make sense?
Interesting, totally.
So it took me a while to
It's
understand
definitely
it,
complex.
and it's very
yeah.
complex. And so when I talked about that issue recently a couple of times, I'm like, why can't we all win? Is there a way to have it where the patient gets the drug they need that's affordable, and insurance companies and payers lower their pricing? How do we get more investments in the drugs? How do we keep it where that's the pipeline's coming in and we still can afford the drugs? How do we both win? And so when I talk to people about the drugs, patients, people were angry at first about what I was saying. Then I'm like, but look at this. If you don't have the money coming in, which it's gonna cost more towards the end, but if you don't have a drug in the first place, you're gonna die, affordability or not. So what I try to bring in is like a really like I try to understand the facts and try to understand who is gonna impact, and I want everybody to win, right? I don't go into it like I want to win. If I win, that's egoic, right? If we all win, that's highest power for all.
Sure.
So I go on things like that, and also when I go on the Hill, I mean, most lawmakers go into into lawmaking to make a difference. Over some time, some people get corrupted in ways we know about, but the average one that goes into that space, it's not a space that's easy to be in.
No.
They go into it to make a difference, and so when I go on the Hill to speak, I encourage people to tell their story. That person or their staffer wants to know what you're dealing with as your constituent. Tell your story, speak from your heart, and tell them when you do this, this is what happens. And that could be your child, your mother, your sister, your brother. So it's always being authentic, it's always speaking from the heart, and it's always knowing the facts. Nothing worse I say than a person that's misinformed with a big microphone. So I teach my patients also to know the facts of what they're saying. So when they're speaking about things from their heart,
Sure.
they're spitting out facts too.
Well, and I think that's where we also see with world issues, whether it's wars or different policies, it's like sometimes people mistake someone's silence, where I used to be of the train of thought, like if you're silent, you're not supporting. Sometimes it's complex, or there's nuances that you see on both sides. And like, I totally appreciate if someone's going to get educated, ask questions, and maybe they're not saying something because they want to make sure their facts are straight.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I love that you said that, because there are things that'll happen, and then you'll see people commenting on it real fast, like people putting out statements.
Yeah.
And my train of thought has been to pause. I love the phrase, the power of the pause.
Yeah.
I like to always pause and figure out, what do I want to say? What's happening? Because a lot of media is propaganda. It's a mass marketing. Like, you hear it from this person, then they copy the same thing, and then so soon it becomes fact, whether it's fact or not. And so I always want to pause and figure out, what am I doing? And I want to feel into my gut about the issue. So I want to be able to respond from this
And where
brain,
you might have a bias or something. Yeah.
all the things, right? So like recently too, like on a separate note, like somebody sent me a really nasty email. Just this person was in their feelings about something and they were judging me, and it was just like vitriol. And but the person before this person sent me the email, I thought she was pretty awesome. So without the email, I thought I knew her.
Yeah.
I thought she's a rock star. She's amazing. I admire her. And out of the blue, she had her own things going on. Sent me this really nasty email and copied people on the email. And I got it. And I was like, oh my God. So my first reaction was like, the fuck? Second reaction was, then my third reaction was like, no, those are not me. That's not me.
Yep.
That's not I'm reacting to. But to your point, I love what you said about reacting versus response. Who am I, and how do I feel about her? What could she be going through? Where is that coming from? So I didn't respond for a month. I didn't plan to be.
Well, and sometimes silence is a good response
well,
too.
I did.
Because it's like they would be quick to.
I did respond to her at some
sure.
point, but I just kind of let myself feel into it. And when I did respond, I responded from a place of love, because that's who I am, and that's who she was. She is, I think. So I responded to her with how I really feel, and I showed empathy and kindness, and I was like authentic with her, and I'm like, I admire you, and I think you're amazing. I don't know where this is coming from, but I was just myself, and she didn't respond back because I didn't give her what she was asking for. I didn't respond to, so to your point, a lack of response was that I'm not going to react. And then when I reacted as myself, not what was coming at me. I think a lot of us in the world, a lot of people react to things that they're
Yeah.
Are coming versus like their true self. And you, in that way, people are actually like, then you're not, to me, that reaction is not courage. Just back to your original question. Courage is saying that I'm going to be myself despite how the world's telling me to react or what you're doing at me. Right?
Sure. I am so grateful that you joined me, especially as one of my first guests. We could talk all day. There's a reason why we've been friends for so long. I do want to wrap with one fun question, because I realize with this podcast and the journey, there's going to be deep, dark, heavy topics. So this might be an interesting one. You might have someone in mind. I kind of feel like I know what your answer might be, but if there was an actress to play you in the story of your life, who would it be?
Oh, come on.
And if you don't say what I think you're going to say, I'll tell you what I think.
I think a mixture of like my energy is like Oprah energy. I love Megan Good. People tell me a lot that I'm like Megan Goodish looking, and she's a hottie. She's gorgeous. She's gorgeous. I'm loving Kelly Rowland. She's so like Kelly, she's so in herself right now.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Who else do I like? I don't know. Give me somebody like.
I was gonna say you.
Oh, I would love.
I was gonna say Maimah would play Maimah.
I love that.
So anyway,
but you're right. I don't think and you know what's interesting? I've been kind of getting out of my own, like, because I did a podcast. It was like a, what do you call, like a podcast where I was a narrator.
Okay.
It's a whole other art form where you're narrating a podcast. Yeah. And I came out of myself doing that. I did a movie last year where I was an extra for.
Are you saying you've been stepping into courage?
I've been stepping into courage. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me.
I love you, Miss M. It's been so great being on this. The time just flew by.
It did. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into The Frequency of Courage. Please leave a review, share the show, and be courageous today.